This week, we welcome writer Peachy Keenan.
But really on 9/11, I kind of like overnight became like, patriotic and was like, wait, I had friends in New York who had almost been killed in the World Trade Center. Meanwhile, the left was just instantly in like, hate America mode, burning the flag. And that was like weird to me. And I was like, oh, wait, I do love America. Hold on a second. So I became like a political conservative then, but it was really only meeting my husband that I became this like, more like social conservative, more, like I kind of disavowed my like previous, like very militant ideas about abortion and all of that stuff. And then really just having kids kind of did the last part for me, just like the process of having children and staying home and deciding not to go back to work.
This is Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Phetasy. I'm Bridget Phetasy, and you are welcome. You know the drill. Please subscribe, rate, comment, share, reach out, tell your friends, send smoke signals, whatever. We love your feedback and we want to hear from you. If you like our work and want to support us, the best way to do that is join PHETASY.com. You'll get access to behind-the-scenes content, outtakes, discounts on merch, and the ability to submit questions for some of our upcoming guests. Support your favorite scrappy little internet heroes at PHETASY.com. Okay, I'm with Peachy Keenan, everybody. Welcome to Walk-Ins Welcome.
Hey, Bridge, how are you?
I'm good. I'm just, just a podcasting around.
I am so excited to finally do this with you. We talked about this for so long, so many months ago before you moved. We were going to do it in person, but I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited for you to be in Texas. That's so cool.
I'm excited for you to be showing your face because when we were talking about it, you still weren't out.
Yeah, I was. Still am a Twitter anon. Peachy Keenan is my pseudonym. But there was no image of me. And like, I have been very careful. Like, I don't like photos of me. I'm like a vampire, I want to be invisible in photos. It's like vanity and aging, like don't go together,
Yeah.
And, so there was no photos of me. There was nothing on Facebook. You couldn't find me on Google. And so in June, for the book launch, I had to like, here I am, do the little song and dance. And it was really weird seeing pictures of me or like screenshots like on Twitter.
Yeah.
Very disorienting.
So how long have you been writing under a pseudonym?
I started tweeting as Peachy in like exactly 4 years ago.
Okay.
It was like my third or fourth Twitter account. My other ones had always been like suspended, or I had been too mean, to a liberal or something. I would get suspended. And so I just thought, well, let me just make a name that like sounds like kind of benign and sort of, silly, like Peachy Keen, Peachy Keenan. Because at the time I was working for a studio. I was writing in-house for one of the big entertainment companies. And so, if they had known who I was or like how I felt about like Hillary Clinton or whatever, I would have been, that's it. Like, I would have been so canceled.
What were you doing for the studio? Were you writing scripts or were you doing like PR?
I was like in the in-house like ad and marketing teams, like in-house creative.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And for like, I did that like on and off for 6 years.
Okay.
And, those people, they wouldn't have been so happy. They had known it was this fascist in their midst.
It's funny how everybody assumes everybody agrees. That's the most disorienting thing for me as somebody who kind of came out of, I don't know, just started thinking differently or questioning things. And then the first thing I noticed was just the presumption that everybody in a room or at a dinner or anywhere is in agreement with whatever anyone's saying about politics or voting or whatever it might be that is generally not something like that everyone in America agrees with.
Yeah, they make so many assumptions, but like when you're in a corporate environment in Los Angeles, in entertainment, you're probably right. Like you probably are safe talking about, your wild, like far left ideas. Like, yeah, most people there are going to agree with you. There were probably a few more people like me, but like I never knew. Like there would be no way to kind of wink at each other and whisper,
Yeah.
I also don't like Hillary Clinton, or whatever. Like there was no like secret handshake you could do to figure out who wouldn't kill you if they found
Yeah,
out.
there was that group in LA, right? The Sons, what was it? The Sons
Uh,
of
Friends of Abe.
Friends of Abe.
Yeah, that broke up though in 2016 because like half of them like
MAGA
Trump, half of them
imploded.
hate Trump, so they totally broke up. Too bad.
Okay, yeah.
Mhm.
So when you were online and doing your pseudonym, how did you end up writing? So then you started writing for other publications under the pseudonym?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a writer, always been a working writer. I'm a working woman, working mom, but always like corporate advertising, marketing, nothing political. And I had a friend who I met through LA Catholic circles. So I'm also like a, conservative Catholic, and it's a pretty small contingent of us here in LA. And so I knew a family, and Matt Peterson was there, and he founded American Mind, which is an online magazine, part of the Claremont Institute. And so we would always talk, and he'd be like, "You should write for us. Oh, you're a writer. You should write something for us." And then a few months after I started tweeting as Peachy, I was like, "Can I send you something?" I just like felt inspired one day. This is 2019, and I sent him some essay I wrote about being a conservative, being a Catholic. What if the persecution? Basically, liberals are always saying like, "Oh, and you call yourself a Christian because you don't want to let 50 million people over the border every single day? Like, how dare you?" And he published it, and that started my kind of writing career as a sort of like Peachy Keenan, like the political pundit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kept doing that, and then I got this book deal. My new book, Domestic Extremists, came out last month, and now I'm writing for different publications. And I'm like, last night I was like on Fox News. It's been really hilarious.
So how did you end up writing this book?
Yeah, this is funny. It was pretty easy to get to do this. I mean, I had written an essay at some point, maybe in 2020, early 2021, called "I'm not a domestic extremist. I'm just extremely domestic," which is which is how I always felt like living in LA with 5 children. And you feel like my liberal friends, or my former liberal friends, my former friends, would look at me like I was a freak. You have more than 2 children in the west side of LA. Like, you can't, how do you fit more than 2 car seats in the back of the Tesla? Like, what are you crazy? Oh, now you're going to be Catholic? Like, what? Like, you are, they look at you like you're this crazy extremist. It's like having a gang tattoo on your face or something.
Yeah.
Like, you can't hide anymore. So I always thought like, oh, that'd be a fun idea for a book, like to call a book Domestic Extremists. And then I forgot about it. And then one of the editors from Regnery just like slid into my DMs on Twitter. And he was like, "Hey, we'd love you to write a book about like motherhood or parenting, why it's good." And I wrote a proposal. I sent it in. A few days later, they accepted it. And they're like, "All right, send us a book in 6 months." That was it.
And that was it.
Yeah.
And how's the reception been? I mean, first of all, coming out, how has it been for you with because you were liberal at one point, or were you not?
Yeah, I was like a pro-choice Democrat basically until my late 20s.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
And then what was the shift for you? How did that change?
Yeah, the first like shift I had, like my parents were Reagan Republicans, but I always rejected that. That was like so uncool. But politics wasn't cool. Like, I didn't care about politics. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't care. I just wanted to be cool and like go out. And we wanted to like be boys and whatever. I'm not going to talk about like who cares who I voted for. And so, but really on 9/11, I kind of like overnight became like, patriotic, and was like, wait, I had friends in New York who had almost been killed in the World Trade Center. And, I went out there a few months later, and I saw the like wreckage, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then meanwhile, the left was just instantly in like, hate America mode, burning the flag. And that was like weird to me. And I was like, oh, wait, I do love America. Hold on a second. So I I became like a political conservative then, but it was really only meeting my husband that I became this like, more like social conservative, more, like I kind of disavowed my like previous like very militant ideas about abortion and all of that stuff. And then really just having kids kind of did the last part for me. Just like the process of having children and staying home and deciding not to go back to work, not what are you doing? Why don't you have a full-time nanny? Why don't you put them in daycare? And I was like, well, am I allowed to take care of my newborn? Like, is that okay? Like, I felt like I needed permission from my peers to stay home with my baby, but like I couldn't give the baby over. I didn't want to give the baby. I didn't care. I don't care. Like I'll be poor, I don't care. And so that was sort of how I became like took my final form as like a full domestic extremist.
How old were you when you had your first of your 5 kids?
So I had my first pregnancy at 31. But that unfortunately ended in a miscarriage at 3 months. It was like very, so devastating to us because we were not prepared for that at all. But then very fortunately, I got pregnant right after. So it was like my early 30s, had the first one, and then had the last one in my early 40s, which, that's a whole other that like hits different, when you have them in your 40s versus your 30s.
I wouldn't know because I've only had them in my 40s,
right.
But I do know. Yeah, it is. It's definitely not. My husband and I always say like this is a young person's game. We're like having kids is such a young person. It's especially when they're little like this, and we don't have nannies or babysitters or anything, and it's just full on. They just go all day. And she, my daughter has abandoned 2 naps pretty early. She's just down to 1 reluctantly.
Oh, that sucks when they abandon the naps. Like when they were like doing 3 naps a day, it was like, oh,
yeah,
that's the best.
She's just down to 1. And even that, it's like, she's fighting it.
How old is she? She's almost 2, right?
She's 15 months.
15 months. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's hard because they can walk, but they have no sense. Nothing. Like they're just every minute is like, what can I do to kill myself?
Yeah. It's so
all
true.
day long. Kill you.
Just a terrorist too.
It is like a little Al-Qaeda toddler.
Yeah. Yeah, she is. And she's learning how to manipulate, this is when they start realizing like they can do things. Like I'm grateful she has the bodily autonomy developing is so interesting to me because on the one hand I'm like, yay, this is awesome. You're aware, you have some control over this, but changing you is now a nightmare.
No, leave my disgusting poopy diaper on. How dare you take this off me right now?
Yeah,
I'm trying to help you, kid. No. I want to have a rash.
They're just so funny. They're just so funny. Toddlers are nutcases. They're just maniacs. They're such little weirdos.
They're like shaved chimps, right?
They really are just something else. It's just so like even just the toddling way they walk cracks me up. It's just fun.
This is why they're so cute. It's also like their max cute age because they're the worst behaved, but they're just so cute. So you can't kill them.
And you can't reason with them because they don't understand that.
No.
There's no ration.
I don't know what age you can reason with them. Like I have teenagers and those are also, they don't really listen to reason all the time either. So maybe
I feel like there's like a sweet spot where from, like 6 or 7 to like 11, it seems like is a real magical time with kids. And then
that's so true.
And then it gets bad again.
When does it get good again?
I think then they enter their 20s and they're like, they're reasonable again.
Right. Because they have their own life and they're not like always like kind of grumpy that like their mom is hanging around all the time.
And they realize how hard all that shit was that they thought was easy. You're like, oh, I'm going to go out there and I just always joke about how I remember being told when I was a child, like, you can eat Lucky Charms every day when you're out there on your own. And you're like, that sounds awesome. I can't wait until you realize you're paying for the Lucky Charms for the refrigerator that the milk is in, for the roof over your head. You're like, damn, those Lucky Charms at midnight are expensive.
Yeah, I thought these dishes just wash themselves. Why are they still here? I put it here. It's supposed to get washed.
It's like, okay, maybe eating Lucky Charms whenever I want it is not worth the price I have to pay.
So true.
Suddenly I realize. Yeah, I love Domestic Extremists because it's hilarious. You write it in such a good, funny tone. Were you ever writing comedy before you wrote this book, which has a very humorous tone to it?
Well, it's funny you asked. I mean, my dream job as a kid was always to be one of David Letterman's writers. That was like what I wanted to do. I was going to write the David Letterman top 10 lists, like that. I was done, right? And then in college, I wrote like a comedy column for the school kind of magazine. I was always writing columns that are really like Peachy columns, just like very tongue in cheek, making fun of stuff. I once had to interview like Pauly Shore. Like they would send me on these funny assignments where I would just like write these like jokey things. And then I had friends who were moving to LA to be comedy writers. And they ended up being very successful writing for Seinfeld or for The Simpsons. And they were like, write your spec scripts, come on. And so I got a job as a comedy writer's assistant for a woman who was sort of like, she was kind of like the mentor to all these sort of young female writers who wanted to write in comedy, write in TV. And she had like created, like written for like Carol Burnett and like Tracy Ullman and all these things. And so I would go to the meetings with her and go to the pitch meetings. I would like pitch her jokes and stuff. And I would go to the parties with all these LA comedy people. But like, I don't know, there was something I just like was, I think, intimidated, number one, by the people. And they were like, it's a lot of nerds from Harvard, from the Harvard Lampoon. And I always felt very intimidated. And I also felt like, I'm in my early 20s. Like I was a nerd in high school. I finally got like kind of cool. I don't want to hang around with a bunch of nerds. Like I want to go out and like look cool, like talk to cute guys, not these crazy nerds, So I just like, I kind of half-heartedly tried to get into it. And I never really finished all my spec scripts. And then I kept getting these day jobs that led me into copywriting. As a writer. So I would write for tech companies and web development companies and ad agencies, and I write commercials. And then I would just kind of like get, they kind of kept increasing and increasing. But I always loved comedy. I would take improv classes at UCB in New York City. It was like it's really my first love. And so I'm, anytime anyone says like, oh, you're funny, or that was so funny or whatever, I always feel like gratified, like, okay, I've somehow used my initial like dreams and like kind of put it into this like little avenue I've mined for myself.
When you were in your 20s, and we have such a similar path in some ways,
we do.
Were you kind of a party girl?
Yes. I mean, I had friends who I would party with who I felt like were probably way more extreme than I did. I didn't ever go too crazy. But yeah, I mean, when I was like 15, 16, we started going to clubs in LA. I had a fake ID. We would sneak out of the house. We would go to all the clubs. I would tell my best friend, I was sleeping at her house. She would tell her mom that she was sleeping in my house. We would come home like, I don't even know what time. And then like in my 20s, we would just we'd be like up in the club. You know what I mean? We were just up in the club in LA, in New York. Like that was just, it was like kind of like the club time,
Do
like
people still go to clubs?
I don't even know I don't think they do go to clubs anymore. Like I don't even know if that
like
exists.
A thing?
I don't know.
I mean,
I don't
it's so weird. I was in LA right before I moved. We were driving somewhere one night, and we drove by like a club, and I used to be the same as you, just always in the clubs in my 20s, and there was like the Blues Club,
House of Blues.
House of Blues. Thank you.
Yeah, it's gone now.
I know, it's so sad. The House of Blues, or right behind the House of Blues, in like that back room, they had this club it was like a club night they had on Sundays, and it was so fun. I don't even think I was 21 yet when I was going to this thing. It was just a blast. I remember going to so many clubs, and so recently I drove by and there was like a line for somewhere. I'm like, do people still go to clubs? Maybe they still do, and I'm just old. But it doesn't feel. I mean, is that just a thing that is like big in your 20s and then you forget about it?
I mean, maybe. I mean, I was in Vegas a few months ago and there's like these big nightclubs there. And I remember going to those clubs on my bachelorette party, which was in Vegas. And there was like these huge, giant, 3-story clubs with like the lasers and all that stuff. And they still exist. I don't even know if that exists in LA. LA seems like more now it's like, Soho House or like these cool bars or whatever. I have no insight into like what you even do in your 20s for fun anywhere. Like, do people just like get stoned and watch video games? Like, I don't even know. Like, but we had a great time. We had a great time, maybe too good a time sometimes. Um I regret nothing. Maybe a few regrets.
Yeah. And then where'd you meet your husband who radicalized you?
So he did radicalize. His toxic masculinity, Bridget, is what radicalized me. Really
You're like the girl that every liberal online is like, all these women vote the way their husbands say that to tell them to vote.
Yeah, I just do whatever he wrote my book. I mean, I don't have any of my own thoughts. It's all him. Blame him. So I had let's see, this is right after 9/11. I'd been working on a TV show in LA, and because of 9/11, the show got canceled. Like ABC pulled the plug. They were like, we can't do the show because of the themes are too sensitive right now or whatever. So here's a severance check and bye. So all my friends were in New York and they were like, move to New York, move to New York. And I was like, yes, Sex in the City. Here I come. Like, I'm going to be Carrie finally,
You're from LA, right?
Yeah. I grew up in LA in the West Side.
Okay.
Yeah. But I had like I'd gone to college on the East Coast. And so I had friends like, we were like bi-coastal elites. Okay.
Yes.
We were like, the flyover, that's trash. And so like moved to New York. And I was like, I'm going to move to New York. And this is right after 9/11. And I'm like in my mid 20s. And everyone's like, you're moving to New York now? And I was like, yeah. And my mother literally said like verbatim, oh my gosh, it'll be just like Sex in the City. Like, what was she thinking saying that, right, to me? So I moved to New York and my friend said, we're having a Valentine's Day party for singles and you should come. And I'd been there a week. Okay. And so I was like, okay, sure. And then she said, oh, she actually knew my future husband. She had been friends with one of his friends and I had known his brother in LA. We had a couple different connections. And I was like, oh yeah, invite him too. Sure. Whatever. I don't care. And so we met, it was actually we met up for drinks before the party at a drag bar. We weren't in drag. In those days, drag was like a funny thing to do at night for grown-ups. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't
I'm like, you guys met at a story hour? What were you doing? What were you doing at a kid's story hour?
He had a toddler on his lap and full makeup.
You were pre-gaming at a story hour, New York.
Yeah, that luckily did not exist yet. So we met, on Valentine's Day at this party and started dating. We had all these friends. I just moved to New York. So we had this big mutual kind of friend group and we started hanging out all the time. And within a few weeks, we sort of like started vibing.
And how long did he have to hide his conservatism from you?
Not long. He just blurted it right out. He was like,
I want a trad wife.
He wanted a trad. Well, he had been like me. He'd been like he'd been a lib. He had been a full lib. Grew up in LA. Had kind of conservative parents, had rejected them, and then he had been converted by friends of his, by even more toxic males that he had met at like grad school or whatever. And so we would have these like arguments about like, he would say, well, yeah, I think guns are fine. Sure, I'll have a gun, and I would be like, what? A gun? Who are you? And so it like, I always like think about that scene in like Goodfellas with Karen, when he like hands her the bloody gun and she's like, I have to admit, it turned me on, after you like beat the guy with the gun. Like he shows her, Ray Liotta shows her, he's like this like tough guy, And so I was like, oh, maybe, but I like him. And so I mean, he was not afraid. He just was like, at that point, I think he'd been so jaded by life in New York and like dating girls in New York that he was like, I'm not hiding, who I am.
Yeah.
Luckily, I was receptive to it.
It's interesting. When I met my husband, you're reminding me that like the first time I ever went over to his house, I took a picture of his books and posted it on Twitter. And it was like
Oh, how
Ion
funny.
Hersey Ali and Christina Hoff Sommers and and
Wow.
I was like, who is this? I was like, is this a, I said something and the comments were all like, run.
Right-wing extremists.
And I didn't know. I knew nothing. I was like, I was like, how do this is a rare kind of guy in LA. And
Wow.
I just think about how hard because when you look at the numbers of when the breakdowns of, I guess it's like primarily white liberal women who are kind of keeping the Democratic Party alive.
Right.
It's
The cat
something
ladies.
like educated white liberal women are the predominant voter for this block. And I wonder what that does to kind of the dating world when you see these discrepancies. How are people even managing to get along and date and meet each other, particularly if a large majority of men are independent or right leaning and a large majority of women are left leaning. And now it's like in your dating first of all, I didn't have social media really when I was I didn't
Neither.
have.
Thank God. No apps.
So I have lots of friends who are still single, unfortunately, and because I feel bad for them because I'm in these groups, these like text message threads where they're kind of joking about their dating, and it seems apocalyptic out there.
Yeah. Totally.
I don't know. I don't even know what I would do. I will tell you, it makes me like want to protect my marriage at all costs.
No, I mean,
we need a date night every week. How many times are we having sex? Let's put it on the calendar. We're not going back out there.
We're not going. Like, we escape by the skin of our teeth. That's how I feel. Like, I found my husband like right before the advent of like the apps, started or whatever. And I can't even imagine. I mean, I also, yes, like what you said, there's a huge discrepancy. Gen Z guys they are like kind of anti-feminist and way more conservative really than the girls. And so, yeah, college age, they're having so much trouble. Like I was at a book reading, my first book event, whatever, in April. And like young guys were coming up to me and they were like, they read me online, they follow me on Twitter, they came to see me, like these like 25-year-old and younger, like college guys, grad school.
They're like hoping to meet some chicks who like your book.
We heard you were a MILF. No, I'm kidding.
No, I mean, were they hoping that like there might be females who like your book at this event?
I don't know.
Maybe there will be
it was
some
really
chicks.
Guys there. Like there were some women there, but they were more like with their boyfriends or whatever. They're toxic male boyfriends. But they were telling me how hard it is to find girls and how to date girls. And like because the girls are 100% woke. They're 100% feminists. They're 100% like scared. Like if the boys have to hide that they're like following these right-wing extremists on Twitter.
Nazis like Ben Shapiro.
They're Nazis like Ben Shapiro. Yeah. But here's the scary thing is that I have been hearing now stories of using the apps from a male perspective. Okay. I have a very close friend who is divorced. He's in his early 40s and he's a good guy. He didn't really want to get divorced. He has kids. Like she kind of left. And he has been on the apps. And let me tell you something, ladies. When you hear him describe how he like thinks about these women, I mean, he's not disrespectful to them, but he's sort of shocked and appalled also by how they act, what they're looking for, like the level of like, he feels like there's all these young girls who are beautiful, gorgeous girls who are just looking for a guy who has like the right job title. And it's very weird. I find it to be very, very dark, very ugly. And he'll have like 2-3 dates a weekend, sometimes 2-3 a day. Okay. It's just this constant string of these young girls. And these girls don't expect anything. Like they're not even looking for like a husband or a boyfriend. They're looking for someone who will like take them on a nice dinner in a nice car and like, I don't know, take them shopping or something. Like it's so ugly. And I hope I would like him, to stop using these apps. But I mean, what do you do? Do you get rid of the tech companies that are doing this? I mean, it's creating such a toxic environment for the women and the men. It's so transactional, and he says stuff like these girls like will have sex like they're brushing their teeth. It's just like what you do get ready for bed. And it's
Right.
just, and men are taking advantage. It's gross.
And but do they expect something in return?
No, literally nothing.
That's depressing.
It is so dark. I mean, it's almost like a quasi escort almost, if you think about
Quasi, only they're not getting anything.
it. Yeah, they're getting, maybe they could have some like sugar daddy situation or something. I don't know. I just find it to be depressing. And I want to, one of the reasons I wrote my book is to like wake women up, young women. I don't know if they're going to read my book, but they should really understand that none of this stuff is good for you. I mean, you wrote that incredible article that we should like airdrop your article.
That I regret being a slut.
We should airdrop copies like all over West Hollywood. Like try to like stop them from making these same mistakes that not only you but me and a lot of other people, our age made.
Maybe they'll grow out of it. It's funny, a lot of the memes I see on Instagram they crack me up because I feel like our generation is that generation that kind of stumbled out of the sexual revolution. We're like the first generation that grew up fully with the pill, fully in the sexual revolution, and stumbling out of it and looking back and going like, you need to go back.
Right.
It's ugly.
Go back.
Turn around. So we're kind of coming back from the war a little bit. And there are all these memes on Instagram that are so hilarious, but speak to that, where it's women who will be in their like houses saying things like, thinking about how me and everyone who I used to narrowly escape death with every weekend are raising kids now, or like thinking about how all my girls that I used to go clubbing with are living their best lives.
Right.
So maybe it's just, maybe they do grow out of it. I think the unsettling part to me is the lie that you can just wait forever to have kids.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And it doesn't, like, for me, it wouldn't have mattered because I didn't meet my husband until so late.
Right.
So I think a lot of women, they might feel like they want to have kids. And I know many women who want to have kids and they can't find a good husband. And then I hear that there are all these good men looking for good women. And I'm like, well, why aren't you guys finding each other? What's the disconnect here?
Yeah, what is the problem? Is it because that they're still, a lot of those women are still like, fully ensconced in feminism, and really maybe they do meet good guys. They probably do meet good guys, but they're also judging them on like whatever the standards of their friends, like, well, he has to be 6'1", he has to be totally ripped, he has to be liberal, he has to make, $250,000 a year, he has to have this, maybe they're like also so picky that they're not willing to look beyond, like, stop being so shallow, look at someone, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying date, like a hideous, like, monster.
I think men do this though, too. I feel this is one of the downfalls of the apps, is that it allows you to be picky, and particularly with women, because men will just, it's a numbers game for them. They'll just swipe yes on everyone and play the cards, and women, it's crazy being a woman on those apps. It's just nuts. You get bombarded, and you can carry on conversations with 5 or 6 guys, and just, a lot of people I know do it as like, I'm on the couch kind of feeling down, and I'm just gonna like flirt with somebody from my couch to boost my self-esteem in this moment, or to get some kind of, it's an easy way to get validation.
Right. Someone swipes on you, you get a little hit of dopamine, and you get addicted to that dopamine rush. But I also feel like, and I've talked about this with other women who kind of escaped that feminism and got married, that we always try to tell people, like, really, You can't on an app, you can't pick up someone's like vibe. Like in real life,
Yeah.
you can meet 5 different guys and you can know instantly, like, no, none of these are for me. Even though they might be good looking or handsome or whatever. And you can meet someone who maybe in a photograph isn't like gonna knock you out or whatever, but you're like, he's so charismatic and you just click. Like that's a kind of thing that kind of like this magic chemistry that you cannot convey in your dating app profile. And like, so like for me, look, in pictures, I may be like one way, like, all right, maybe, mid, maybe. But like in real life, maybe I'm going to say something funny and be kind of charming or, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not a supermodel, but maybe in real life, I could like, charm somebody a little more. And so we're kind of cutting that all off. And maybe we have to go back to like in person. Like people have to start going to, I'm not saying go to like these horrible clubs, okay, go up in the club, but some kind of event. Like, yeah, maybe it is like you and me, like doing events, like dating events.
Yeah.
Where people can come and like,
that's a good idea.
We should do this.
We should do this.
Louise is doing it in London. Louise Perry.
We should do this.
Yeah.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed too, kind of in the manosphere, a lot of the guys who are even center right, and they're like, oh, talking about like the falling birth rates and blah, blah, blah. And like, get your shit together. I'm like, none of you guys have kids either. Like, they don't have kids either. All these guys in the manosphere, it's like that's a weird phenomenon. The people who are like weirdly fixated on this and like, what's going on with women? I'm like, okay, why don't you knock out a few kids and like,
right.
Stop talking about your abs.
I want to take my dating advice from like, Rudolph Valentino or like Sophia Loren, like a great, you want the person with the message to be someone who's successfully figured out how to do it for sure.
Yeah. That was another weird phenomenon that occurred. Like even in LA, when I would be in these writers' rooms, there would be all these kind of broken people talking about their dating life. And I was actually married at the time and still am, but it was like I was already married and had a child, and somebody made a joke, they'd all be talking to each other and they're like, why don't we ask the like 2 people in this room who have like successful marriages and children? And it's just everyone else talking to each other about what they should do. And I'm like, why are you guys listening to each other? None of you are successful at this.
None of you know what to do. Yeah, it feels like the people who can pull off a kind of like, quasi-stable relationship and put together a family are like few and far between because it's so hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's never been harder. It's never been harder. And it's true, like you said, the longer you wait, it only gets harder. And that's what I do talk about this in my book. Like, I'm sorry to say, but you're going to have a better chance if you focus on this when you're a little younger. Okay. Like whatever, hitting the wall, whatever. Okay. But you're just, when you're 25, it's a lot easier than when you're 35 or when you're 45.
I know, but now I'm going through another round of friends getting divorced. I went through this round once because I'm 44.
Okay.
So the people who got really young, like I had a few friends because I'm from small towns. So, and a lot of my friends from high school actually got married and right out of college, basically. So they were still very young when they got married and had kids. And there was like this first round of divorce around 7 to 10 years into it. When I would say I was around 32 to 35. I remember like it felt like everyone I knew was getting split up. And then there was kind of this quiet. It does kind of follow that like weird 7-year pattern.
Yeah. Totally.
So it seems like then
what's triggering this new wave of divorces? Like, what are the reasons? Is it economic? Is it just middle age?
I don't know. It just seems like it's another 7 to 10 year. A lot of people I know who've been married 7 to 10 years who are splitting up right now. I think the pandemic revealed a lot. People who were able to kind of coexist and suddenly had to coexist in the same house and couldn't escape one another and or escape the problems in their marriages. That was, my therapist says this all the time. She's like, people didn't break up during the pandemic, but she's like, they're all breaking up now. It was like they were forced to try and make it work. And then once everything opened up, they were like, life is too short. I'm out of here. I don't want to do this. So there's that. There seems like that
FOMO.
post pandemic. Yeah. And also maybe just realizing that, I don't know, it's sad to me, you know, that marriage just doesn't mean what it used to mean.
Right.
My grandmother and grandfather, they had a hell of a time in their marriage, and they had 10 kids. And there was a time when I think he wanted to get divorced and she would not let him. She was like, you aren't leaving your family. I'm not allowing this to happen. And she fought for it. And they ended up staying together. And I think he died with a lot of regret about her.
Really?
But I think so.
Wow.
She died before him. And I think he lived with a couple. He died shortly thereafter, like 2 years after. But I know he wrestled with a lot of feelings of regret and because she was very clear, you know, we don't get divorced. It wasn't even an option for her.
Wait, he regretted not getting divorced, or
No, he regretted like
hurting her feelings.
Yeah, just the things, just the problems they had.
Yeah, I mean,
and his role in that.
Yeah, I mean, I think people, you know, marriage is not, you know, you're not going to feel on your 20th anniversary like the day you did on your first date or the day you got married. It changes. The relationship obviously changes. It's like this, you know, like there's tough times, there's great times, but the dynamic changes. And I think people feel like, oh, I feel like I'm mad at them. I'm not like as like crazy in love. I better go. Not understanding that this is like a lifetime process. This is a relationship that it will change. Like anyone, this is family. You don't love your brother, your sister, your mother like every day. Sometimes you can't stand them. But I think that they're not, you know, it's all about short-term pleasure. You know, it's all about what's going to make me the happiest today. And like today, I want to be single today or whatever. And the benefits are, you know, people can't look long term. People are afraid of death. They don't want to think about, well, where do you want to be on your deathbed? You know, I was the child of a boomer divorce, like many people. And I like literally, it sucked. Okay. It ruined our lives in many ways. It blew up my family. It like, you know, made everybody poor. It was like this, just to this day is a source of like, despair and like shame and like what if we had kept the house, what if we had been able to, what if my mother wasn't alone right now, you know, what if my dad hadn't like got all this stuff. But I have to feel sort of also grateful for it, because that made me, even when I was a liberal, even when I like didn't care, I wasn't interested in finding a husband, I knew that like if I ever do get married, I'm not getting divorced. I'm not going to put myself through that. I'm not going to put my children through that. Now, my mother, like, it wasn't her fault. Like, my dad was 100% at fault in their marriage. So I was like, well, I'm going to marry someone who I'm certain is like a good guy who will be loyal to me, who won't do things purposely to like hurt his children and his wife. Like, what an ass, what a dick move.
Yeah.
Why would you do that to hurt people you love? And so the idea to me now, like, even if I'm in a fight with my husband, I'm like, you're driving me nuts. The idea that I would go and like cheat on my husband, like hurt someone so incredibly deeply, my children would never forgive me. I would cause irreparable, destructive harm to them, their lives, their psyches that would go on for like decades.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't now even comprehend of doing that. So I think I talk about this in my book, like, you know, before you get married, both of you need to kind of be in that mindset that like, we're going to be good to each other. Be nice. Don't be a dick. Be nice to someone. You know, this is your husband or your wife, like your children. You would never hurt them on purpose. And so you have to do this battle maybe maybe every day, maybe once in a while, like my selfish short-term needs versus what's best for me in the long term. It's like exercising. Sometimes it sucks. Sometimes it's hard. You don't want to do it, but it's better for you. It'll keep you alive. It'll keep you from giving all your money to a divorce lawyer and living in a car or whatever,
Yeah, my husband and I talk about this a lot because we are both children of boomer divorces as well. And both of us can point to that being the moment that our life changed forever.
Correct.
Both of us we were like good kids and good students who we met in recovery. So we all know how that story went.
Right.
And I don't know that it would have gone that way. I don't, it's like I can point directly to my parents' divorce when I started drinking and smoking weed and kind of when my life went off the rails.
Yeah.
And I'm not blaming them for it because I'm too old to blame my parents for that shit. But I can look at my life and take an assessment and say, okay, the most important thing I can give my daughter, one of them, is a solid, healthy marriage.
Right.
Because I wouldn't want her to grow up in a marriage where two people were just staying together for her either. That would suck.
Yeah, that would be weird too. I mean, obviously, yeah.
Seems like a lot of pressure to put on a child.
We hate each other, but you made us stay together.
Yeah, this is your fault. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's good we live in a time where that's an option. I think just trying to avoid finding yourself in those, it's so hard though. Life is so, I don't judge people for getting divorced when they're miserable. I wouldn't want two people who are miserable to be together. And you change a lot in 10 years, but damn, is that hard on kids in ways that I feel like people have just don't even consider anymore.
Yeah, the children are the last thing they're thinking about.
It's like an afterthought.
Totally.
I feel like at least in our generation, they were like, this is really bad for kids. And they were like, kids are resilient. That's what I always hear. Kids are resilient.
Right. Do you really want to test the limits of their resilience by causing them total mental chaos? Do we want to see how resilient they are? I don't want my kids to have to figure out how resilient they are. I mean, and the thing is, I try to convince people, life is hard, whether you're single forever, whether you have, you're on Tinder every single weekend with a new date and you only have cats for the rest of your life and you're child free and footloose and fancy free. Life will be hard for you in many, many ways. Life is hard for me as I'm in a monogamous marriage, hopefully till I'm dead with all these kids. Life is also hard. It's well, what kind of pain do you want? Choose your pain, And I personally prefer this pain because at least there's I can live with myself. I can sleep at night, not what have I done, And I'm not going to have these deathbed regrets. Sometimes my sister and I talk will our dad, on his deathbed, will he finally be like, what did I I don't want
I lose?
Yeah, I don't want that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I don't even know if I should tell this story on a podcast.
Tell it.
We can always edit it out. I was that thing Storyworth? It's a app where you can sign people up and then they get one question. It's pretty cool. My mother-in-law is really into it. First she's doing it for my daughter so that she can know her life. I wish I had it for my greatest generation parents.
Right.
This podcast is not sponsored by Storyworth, but it would be serendipitous if it was.
They should sponsor it.
I think that they do sponsor some. I'm not sure if they are anymore, but they did. That's how I became aware of it. And then it ended up being a really great gift for certain people. And I asked my father if he would be interested in it. And he wrote me this long text message. And he was like, I've made peace with I've forgiven I was like, whoa.
Wow.
I just wanted to hear about your trip to Thailand. My husband read the response and he was like, your dad's murdered a lot of people. It was such a crazy response. And he's like, I don't want to look back on my past. I was like, okay, I was just wondering about that year you took that trip around the world. I didn't need you to reflect on all of you. I wasn't carry your secret to the grave. First question, what is it? It was so funny. It was such a well, that escalated quickly.
Right. His PTSD is triggered.
I was like, geez, Louise. Okay.
Yeah.
A simple no would have sufficed. Yeah. But I wonder if that's that, like, boomer divorce regret. Not regret, because they're all in other relationships that seem better for them. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they're immune. They've escaped how it affected their kids.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of denial, and I mean, in that generation, they are, feelings are not like still like are not something you're going to like expound on, and you're not going to like be therapeutical about yourself or what you've done. And like if you have done bad stuff, like you have to kind of forget it. You have to just like ignore that. And but your kids never forget. We'll never forget what you did. No, I mean, I love my parents. I forgive whatever their flaws. We're all flawed. We're all kind of a mess in a way.
We're all gonna mess up.
Yeah, I totally forgive them. They love me. I love them. Okay, so I can't. I don't want to go too far down the road. I was not like abused or whatever. And they, look, here I am. Me and my siblings were like, we're here. We made it. We're parents. We're doing the best we can. So they did something right, I guess.
They made us resilient. Maybe we're doing our kids a disservice.
That's right. Yeah, I gotta cause them a little more pain, more emotional pain, more psychic pain. But they have enough psychic pain, like me, like writing this book and like going on like all my TV things. They're like, what are you doing?
Oh yeah, what's that like for them?
That to them, it's cringe. Like their mom, like her face on the thing, it's like, oh mom, like, what are you doing? Like, you're too old. Like, no one wants to look at you. Look at you. You're old.
Oh gosh.
They keep me very humble. They're nice. Yeah. They're supportive though. But it was funny after I first kind of like came out, my first like TV thing, I was like on Fox News or whatever. My kids' friends were texting them and stuff saying like, I saw your mom on TV. Like the whole school was like talking about it. It's really funny. I was like, oh my gosh. Like at carpool pickup, I was like this,
Did you have friends like who didn't know that you had this persona who you lost or anything like that? Or had you already?
I mean, I have friends like on the other side who don't know that I do this.
On the other side of the war.
I don't know if they know because they don't really watch any of the stuff. They're not gonna like they're libs, they're not gonna even be aware of what I'm doing. I hope not. And none of them, if they have found out, none of them have reached out to me. Like no one said anything like, now I hate you. How dare you? But I was, at some point, somebody who I used to work with at the studio is gonna find out. Like, and these people were so militant, like so fanatical, like in their like left wing, beliefs that they will potentially be angry and like I betrayed them or whatever. But the funny thing was like people who I know who are friendly, who are also like on the right, like moms at our school, some of them knew. Like I have friends who kind of guessed a few years ago that it was me writing for the American Mind, and I was like, yeah. So they all knew. But some people, one woman came up to me, we were in Mass, and she had a screenshot. I had been on Megyn Kelly like last month, and she had a screenshot of me on her phone. She's like, look at this. I was watching Megyn Kelly, and this woman looks just like you. And I was like, yeah, it does look like me. She's like, that's not you, is it? And I was like, it is. That's me. That's it. She was like, no, it's not. No, it's not. No, that's not you. And she like didn't believe me that it was me.
It's got to be disorienting and kind of weird to be a pseudonym who becomes public. It's just got to be a strange sensation. I've always been weird. Stupid enough to use my face.
It's totally weird. No one has like doxed me fully yet. I don't have Antifa at my house. My real name, my husband's like office is not getting phone calls. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm not, not like famous. So thank goodness I'm still protected by my relative obscurity.
Same.
Yay, obscurity.
Yay, obscurity. How has the response to your book been?
It has been, I had no idea what was going to happen. I was really more worried about the hate. Like I have already, I'd gotten death threats and stuff on Twitter before for certain things. So I thought there would be this like, mostly it would be hate. And I was like pleasantly surprised. Like so many people have been so incredibly nice.
Mhm.
strangers are leaving like all these 5-star reviews on Amazon about the book. Like people come up to me. I was at a wedding and some people who really I'm not close with, but like, knew about me, read the book, just like effusive, like so happy I wrote it. They hope it will like do good in society or whatever. And so that has been like, so, I mean, as a writer to have like feedback that's like overwhelmingly positive is like rare. Okay.
Yeah.
And, it's been really overwhelming and like exceeded what I thought would happen. So I'm super grateful. Like, I don't know if I'll ever write another book. It's so hard. It's so much work, but, it's been like so great. Like, if it's like an ego boost, each review, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm so honored, someone actually read something I wrote.
It seems like there's probably more people who feel the way that you feel than you might think. They're
Yeah,
just it's
totally.
just not the voice that gets elevated in
Yeah,
by the algorithms. It's just not the
exactly.
message that people are hearing. And like I said in that I regret being a slut piece, just the culture was so supportive of my sluttiness that there was no other messaging. I feel like at least now I see on TikTok, like, which is weird, these big busted trad wives who are like cosplaying trad wifery with their like badly baked bread, and it's very strange. I'm like, yes, when I think of trad wife, I think of showing your boobs on the internet.
Right.
But it does seem to be like a rising counterforce.
I think so. I think there is for sure. I think that, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I'm not recommending that people like put on the corset and bake the pie and like lean over to the camera, look at my pot cherries, boys, I don't do that. Okay. I don't really bake, but yeah, I think I think you're right. There is a movement. Like it's not political. It's not about like right, left, Republican, liberal. It's young women are like figuring out what you and I figured out, like, oh yeah, like promiscuity and random dating isn't making me happy. I feel degraded. I'm wasting my best years. I don't want this. I want like true love, and I want security, and I want a family. And so I think there is absolutely a movement. I mean, like our friend Louise Perry, people have been coming up to her. Her book came out, I think, last year, and like women in England. Okay. And I mean, England is like, so woke, are coming up to her and saying like, thank you. You're right. Yeah. Dating is not working for us. We hate it. Like
Yeah.
we want to just find boyfriends and fall in love and be treated
Yeah.
respectfully. And so she started having those dating events. So, and I mean, the boys I met at my book reading were like the same. They were like, can you help us? Like we hate what feminism has done to young women. And I think that the women hate what it's done to them. The expectation that you'll get on the pill when you're 14 and you can do whatever you want with whoever you want, and there's no consequences. Like, okay, there are consequences, even if you don't get pregnant and you don't get like an STD, there are emotional consequences. Your heart gets broken. You're not allowed to talk about that, but
Yeah.
it does.
Oh God, I think about just the demoralizing. It's so funny. I'll get like emotional talking about this, but lately I've been feeling like a loser. I just have had this feeling, and this is I really, when I really drill down and I'm like, what is this? Because I can look around and objectively know that's not true, and it is like the remnants of that, what I did to myself.
Right.
It's still just like
Yeah.
that. It's not like a hangover. It's cellular. It's so hard to
Yeah.
explain. And whenever my hormones feel kind of out of whack, or if I feel like PMSy, I'll start feeling kind of insecure, but it goes so much deeper than that. And it feels like this like fundamentally broken part of me. And I feel like a loser. And I'm like, what is that? It's so hard for me to grapple with, because there's such a disconnect between my obvious reality and that very real feeling. And I really, the more I look at it, the more I think it is from like years of damage that I did to my psyche and soul, just like allowing myself to be treated like garbage.
Right. It's like the hangover from all those like short-term dopamine hits, feeling affirmed as like you look pretty or you're desirable or whatever. But then the dopamine goes away and you have like this, it's like a drug withdrawal, and you're just girls are just constantly chasing that high again. And like you said, there are so many side effects and it does last. And I think that's why antidepressant use is like so high among women. They're on so many different mood stabilizers and so many different like anxiety medications, and mental health is so bad. People are killing themselves. And I think it is because, mainstream culture, like this lifestyle we're telling people to live, like you said, it's the only message you get. Get on the pill and
Yeah.
do whatever you want. And don't let marriage hold you back. Don't worry about kids. And like they're not telling them the side effects of it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like
That's what it is. It's like a side effect of that
yeah.
life. And I don't even think I was always chasing like dopamine. I really wanted to fall in love, and I chased love as a drug, but I chose the worst men, like just horrible men. I was chasing love addicts and players, and always chasing players. Like the biggest, it was like the challenge was what motivated me.
You want that
And
trophy.
yeah, there's this whole idea, and I've talked about this on the podcast, of alpha widows. This exists in like the manosphere and like even far right circles, because I learned of this when I think it was like one pocket of the internet that's particularly nasty came after me, and they deemed me an alpha widow, and I was like, what the fuck is an alpha widow? And I looked it up, and it was like a average looking woman who chases after alphas and essentially widows myself, because I'm always like, and I'm like, I hate when the trolls are right. It's
Well, I
not
wouldn't say
100%.
average looking. Okay. Give yourself that.
It's not 100% true. It's a cruel thing, and it's not
Right.
100% true, but there is an element of truth to what they're saying.
Yeah.
I did, in effect, continuously leave myself not widowed, but bereft of a loving companion, because I was chasing after these alpha males who are largely douchebags.
Right. And unavailable.
So there's a problem with the males too. It's like the problem I hate with this whole discourse is that it puts all of the blame on the women and doesn't put any of the blame on the men to like kind of man up or be better men or any of this. They're like, well, what do you expect a man to do in this climate? I'm like, that's not the right answer either, guys.
Yeah, I mean, they're victims of feminism also, where they've been, kind of dismissed as their traditional masculine role as like husband, father, protector. Like you should court a woman, you should be respectful to a woman, you should be chaste, you should be kind of like the old like chivalric order of knights. That was sort of like this. That's what we used to have as this like sort of masculine ideal. And that all got thrown away, and men were kind of left to kind of figure out, how do I be a man in post-sexual revolution America,
But do you think like all feminism is bad? Like we wouldn't even be having this conversation were it not for a certain amount of feminism.
Yeah, I make this argument in the book too. I like talk about the history of feminism, the different waves. So like the first wave, was great. It was, let's give women the right to vote, have a say.
Property.
Yeah, not be beaten by their husbands and have no recourse legally, and be able to work. It was really anti-prostitution, because women without a husband like couldn't have proper jobs. So they either have to like work, scrubbing fireplaces, or be prostitutes. So it was like anti-prostitution. It was trying to liberate women from like the worst level of poverty and like, horrible lifestyle, putting their children in orphanages because they couldn't pay, feed the poor kids. So that was all great. And it really became later on, that it kind of like jumped the shark, and so it wasn't about helping women. It's about helping women at the expense of men, at the expense of family, and elevating women as a sort of like supreme, like this ideal woman now doesn't need a man, doesn't need a child, doesn't and those things are kind of bad for you as a woman. So yes, it was good at first, but I think now when you say feminist, I like recoil, because the thing is now feminists have found a women they like better than us, and those women are men, and they're now those are now the focus. Is
the patriarchy so crafty? I always joke, like, I didn't believe in the patriarchy. When I heard feminists talk about it, I was like, you guys are full of shit. And now I'm like, okay, you guys were right. The patriarchy is real.
Yeah, these patriarchs are in our locker rooms with their schlongs hanging down, wiggling around. These are the patriarchs. But they say they're women. So we're not allowed to say anything about them, but it's still the white man keeping us down.
It's so funny. It's like been such a weird time to be in my lifetime, just of the, like, what wave of feminism is this where men take priority over women? I'm like, okay, so we've come full circle.
Full circle,
I guess.
And prostitution now is good. Like going on OnlyFans that's sex work. That's the best thing you can do with your body, is monetize it to strangers on the internet. That's a true feminist.
Yeah, when I started doing stand-up like 10 years ago, I had a joke about how, like, strippers were treated better than me.
Yeah.
As a waitress. I was like, being a waitress, my friends would be like, I'd have stripper friends, and I'd be like, why don't you wait tables? They'd be like, gross, that's so degrading. I'm like, I'm sorry. Last time I saw you were putting a dollar bill in your butt cheeks. And they're like, except mayo on the side? No, thank you. I think I'd rather do what I'm doing. But it was true. Like, they were like, why would I make no money to be treated like shit?
Right.
When I can make a lot of money to be treated like shit.
What is that? What is the like, kind of rebranding of prostitution as, that's a good job for a girl. There was like a video on Twitter of some guys at a college recruit, like a job fair for college students from OnlyFans. At college.
Is that just 4chan trolling, or is it real? I feel like that's the question I ask every day.
I'll check with the guys down at 4chan, see what they say.
Yeah, your buddies. All right. We really should do an event, like a courtship event.
I'll come to Austin and we'll do it.
Well, I was just talking to somebody about this because we were watching Pride and Prejudice. It's just been kind of promoted on Netflix for whatever reason. And I watched the version with the guy from Succession, which I forgot he was even Mr. Darcy.
Which guy?
Who's the one with Keira Knightley?
Okay, that one, the classic one. Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was watching that and I was like, man, we've come a long way from this. Courting. Like court.
Okay.
There just
chaperones.
Chaperones, where like a woman in your family having sex outside of marriage would ruin your whole family and all of the chances of the other women.
Right. You're permanently tarred for life.
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. We should go back to that.
Yeah, that was pretty extreme.
But they had some ideas we should reconsider, probably.
Courtship.
You can't flirt now. You can't flirt with a girl because after Me Too, if you look at a woman, you're harassing her,
I don't know what it's like out there. I wish I could like inhabit the body of a hot 20-year-old and see what it's like for them from like a first person perspective.
Should we go undercover, you and I, like go clubbing,
yes.
Like dress like 20-year-olds?
They'd be like, who are those old sad ladies?
My grandma's
no, what we
here.
should do is go undercover on the dating apps.
Right. Oh my gosh. That'd be a great investigative thing to do. I don't know if I have the stomach for it, but.
I did a piece when I was at Mel Magazine, The Single Men of Ashley Madison, and it was the darkest piece I've ever written. It took me so long because I was like, I am having a hard time writing this. It's so dark. I even met some of them in person. That's like the thing where it's for married people to go and find people to cheat with, right? Yeah. But there's single dudes on there. Bro. Like, why is that a thing? I know that's so
That's so
I
upsetting.
wrote a whole thing
Wow.
about
I
it.
haven't
It
read
was
it. I
like
gotta read it.
there are different reasons guys were on there, but it was just being in there. It was so dark and sad, and the like men in loveless relationships where there's no affection, and like the lack of women, just how overwhelming it was if you were a woman in that site. This was after everybody was hacked. I'm like, I can't believe people are still even here.
Right. They don't care. You know, it's like
No.
my husband has a joke when he'll hear about something like this. He'd be like, how horny are you? You know, like
Yeah.
get a hold of yourself. Don't burn it all down because you got a boner. You know what I mean?
I know. It was really dark. And now when I hear about these dating apps, I'm like, this is dark, guy. Like, it's funny. I'm glad you're all joking about it because it's the only way to make it tolerable.
Yeah, very happy that we escaped that. I think Gen X, you know, we were lucky. We didn't have all the stuff in our face as kids. We didn't have phones and
Yeah. I feel bad for the
social media.
millennials, as stupid as they are.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
I don't feel that bad for them. No, I do.
I do, because they got like the worst of it. But Gen Z seems a little more inoculated. They seem like they're a little more, I don't know, maybe they just have parents who are more used to the online world, but they seem a little more, I don't know, maybe not. They're also the most depressed generation, right?
Yeah, I mean, the ones I've met, maybe I just so anecdotal, but they give me hope. I mean,
Yeah,
my
me
son
too.
is Gen Z, and like I see his friends, and these guys. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to have. They're going to rescue us. I mean, I think
Yeah.
they're going to put together. You know, the millennials kind of dropped the ball, and these guys are going to pick it up and hopefully put together stable lives. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
What's your biggest defect of character?
Of me personally?
Mm-hmm.
Probably laziness. I procrastinate a lot. That's why I'm on Twitter. I mean, Twitter for me is just like a writer's place, a place that I go to procrastinate when I'm on a deadline. And I was always like a late night person, always doing things last minute, pulling all-nighters all through college. That's how I got through. I never like came home with the assignment, got right to work. I'm a procrastinator. I'm lazy. I like always try to find something else I can do. And that's why Twitter is so dangerous for me. I have to like turn it off, you know, when I'm going to like really get to work. So I would say that maybe that's a humble brag. I don't know, but
no, that's a good defect of character.
I'm a little lazy.
What is your biggest asset?
My biggest asset. I'm not, it's very hard to offend me. I don't even understand people who are always offended by everything. I like can't be offended. Like I mean, I guess if you know, called me like ugly and fat, I would be hurt. My feelings would be hurt, you know, but like very little offends me. Like I see it's offensive to you and like, yeah, oh, off-color jokes or joking about this and that. Like, okay, yeah, it's not appropriate. But I like never get to a thing of I'm like, I'm so offended. Like I don't know. I'm just like kind of immune.
I don't know that I am self-important enough to be offended. I think there's a very direct relationship between a sense of self-importance and a high ability to be offended.
I think that helps, like to be like a writer, to be, you know, writing, you know, comedy or whatever. You have to have very thick skin.
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of our resilience that we developed from our childhoods.
I mean, for me, it was growing up in a big family. We were just talking about that on my podcast I do with my husband, Factory Settings. We talked about sense of humor, and it was interesting to unpack how one's sense of humor develops. And that was a big piece, was just being in a big family and getting roasted by your family aunts and uncles and family cousins.
Right. It's like one big happy roast.
Yeah. Well, where can we find you in your book?
You can follow me on Twitter at Keenan Peachy, and my book, Domestic Extremist, A Practical Guide to Winning the Culture War, is at Amazon and Barnes & Noble and anywhere books are sold. And you can also subscribe to my Substack, peachykeenan.substack.com.
Amazing. I didn't know you started a Substack.
I sure did. Get out there, baby.
I will.
Awesome. Most of that stuff is free. I don't really pay well much, so yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Bridget. I love you. Appreciate
Love
this.
you. There's no check-in this week because we're on vacation. Tune in next week for another riveting episode that will change your life, help you get out of your own way, and solve all the world's problems. I want to thank our composer, Jared Elias, my co-producer and cousin, Maggie, and all of you out there listening. This has been Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Phetasy. I'm Bridget Phetasy, and you're welcome. It's the dumbest line.